I feel that I will. Thank you so much for your hospitality, for welcoming a lot of us here who are visiting for maybe first or second time. It's a great honor. I would also like to pay my respects and recognize all the speakers who went here before, because it's been provocation after provocation. It's been literally, we have a saying back home where we say, we need to call ourselves for a small meeting, right? So you can ask yourself, what's really going on and what must you do? So I thank you for that. So for this session, it's going to be quite fast. I come from the background of storytelling, and at Doc Society, we are champions. That's what we live and breathe. How we can use storytelling to drive social impact. We have a climate program, and that's where the Climate Story Labs sit. They're happening, and we are very honored, really, to be part of this global community, and so humble to partner with SAGX and NAS here. I'd like to start by sharing with you a trailer. It's of a film documentary called Thank You for the Rain. And it's the story of a small-scale farmer based in Kenya. And the filmmaker followed this farmer. His name is Kisilu. He lives about maybe 5 hours from the capital city. The filmmaker followed Kisilu for 5 years, just to understand how climate was affecting him. What does that look like on a daily experience and on a personal level? So I'll show you the trailer. It's just 3 minutes. And I'll share with you very quickly what we managed to do with that film after it premiered, using storytelling as a tool to advocate for and to drive social change that you can see at community level. So if you can help me just play the trailer for Thank You for the Rain, I'll be grateful.
When the rain fails, every farmer feels like running away.
Christine, what can you say about rain today?
No, I think when we look on the sky, it seems as if it will rain soon.
Are you happy with it?
I'm very happy with it because it's the mother of all living things.
You can be in bad terms with your family members, hearing that you have nothing for their bellies. Unfortunately, that is a very big problem to some people and to me.
Lakini nina mwezi miezi mana suira wa climate change.
We kwatha yula wagwatiala nongina withie wikite sai vandu wazi ngisa kugwa kuna atialila nengutia miti ya nondo mana
Na no mwijira wane beba ngona umwe baluka.
Has this ever happened before?
The other season we were crying no rain. Now we are talking of flood. Everything is being contradicting.
It's crunch time at the COP21 in Paris. The objective and requirements are clear. We need a universal agreement on climate.
I'm going for my family's future. This is my chance to share my story. The story that I have is an alarm to everybody.
They have polluted our atmosphere for
mwikale neta na mwivoya.
What are the qualities of a good father? Who is a good leader?
Are you nervous?
No. Yeah, I'm not scared in any way. I'm ready.
These tools, we call them cultural tools. It's films, it's spoken word, it's music, it's podcasts. And we always say that it starts with a good story, a compelling story. And we've been told about that a lot today. And the question we ask is, what can this story do? What can art work do? Who must see it? And after they see it, the communities that are represented in that film, what do they want? What are they advocating for? And so then what is our role in bridging that gap of what they're advocating for? Who has it? And how can this work of film then be used to bridge that gap? So with this film, it premiered to an international release, and it did very well in the festival circuit internationally. It won many awards. But beyond that, then what? So after the glitz and the glamour and the red carpet, what do we do with all of that? So we went back to Kisilu, and we said, Kisilu, there's all of this is happening. It's great for the film. What do you need? And Kisilu said, I cannot answer that question. We have to go back to my community. So we went back to where Kisilu comes from in the village. And we met community representatives. At the time, when we started this whole campaign, the film was not ready. We had the trailer. And every time it played, there was a lot of conversation. Hands go up from community elders and women in the room. And they would say, this is what we need. So in a nutshell, they said, if there was, an opportunity in this universe where this film could open a door, we have problems with water. We need an earth dam because when it rains, it floods and we need to harvest the water. We need information on climate, smart farming. We need access to our local leadership. We need to meet them. And they shared all of these things that have to do with climate adaptation and livelihoods and all of that. I want you to remember that we are filmmakers, okay? And so we've come here with this film. And so when we're hearing things about dams building, dude, it's like we don't know. That's a very different language. We don't know how to do that. That's not what we're experts in. And so basically just getting all of that information, we basically just started looking for who has these things, who does the climate work and climate smart teaching and seminars and capacity building, who constructs dams. And so we just got to learn very quickly that this work that we do cannot happen without collaboration and partnerships. So all I'm saying in this room is that, one, we're enough. We've got what we need in this room. And number two, the more different we are, that's awesome. The different disciplines represented in this room, they're amazing. And they are bread and butter for the work that we do as storytellers. And so it's okay if you're a researcher, if you're a scientist, and it's okay for us to be storytellers because we need you. We're always asking, and thank you for the provocation earlier, Ken and Nemo as well. We're always asking, what does the movement need? What's happening? What's the real argument? So then how do we tell that in form of story? So back to the slides. Annie, give me the slides. So we started very simple. We started screening the film. The first place we screened the film was at the community. We had a big premiere at the shopping center. Very top, please go back. Top. Go back to the first slides, please. Yeah, so we started screening the film in the village where Kisilu comes from. Then we started taking the film again to schools and would make sure Kisilu would come. the main character in the film, and he would answer questions from the students. And then after that, because of the global popularity and success of the film, we used those platforms to leverage on what the community members asked for. So when Kisilu got an opportunity to go for TED, or when he got an opportunity to go to COP26 it was, we would say, listen, this is what we're looking for. If you're in this room and you know dam builders, if you're in this room and you have a contact at the governor's office, if you're in this room, any of the things that we were looking for, we would reach out to the room. And this is how we met amazing people. We met an organization that actually constructs dams, where Kisilu comes from. This is the work they do. We met them in a screening in a forum such as this one. And so it wasn't enough to just get the contacts, right? Because this work costs. And it's always, okay, so I have a film, I need to do a campaign, or I need to do a campaign strategy, but who's gonna pay for it? Who's gonna do this work? So we needed to fundraise. And so it was in one of these international platforms, actually Climate Days, where we met funders who were looking for projects to support within the continent, right? And that's how they came on board the project. And we got support to carry out a campaign that lasted for a while. So what did we do? So this is one of the things we do. In partnership with the dam builders, we were able to construct 3,423 cubic meter earth dam. And this was mainly an advocacy tool where the community needed space to constantly convene, to talk amongst themselves, to be reachable. For example, by the people looking for markets, to aggregate their produce, for example, and for them to continue getting support from the government interventions that were happening in their area. And so we also got additional support from a local university that donated things like beehives, the containers that you see there, which are now serving as offices for the community, and so on and so forth. The other thing that we did was, because the campaign founders actually, by the time the pandemic was coming, we were almost in the last stages of the campaign. And in this room, I know you will ask us, what about sustainability? A word that's used all the time. I tell you, when I got into the space, that was a very hard word for me. And so it was like, so after the campaign, what do we do? What are we going to leave the community with? And then we quickly understood we had no exit plan, So we learned there are people who do this work. They work with communities. They know about these things. They know about putting exit plans in place. And those are the people we looked for, and we partnered with them. We said, help us. We got a bit of support. It's not going to be top dollar, but it's not going to be free either. And so they helped us craft an exit plan where we have a cooperative right now that the community has. They have a bank account. Basically, they have the necessary structures to get the support they need to stand on their own. They don't need us, really. And it's important that I mention the importance of this collaborations. And the partnerships they're diverse. It's not just money. The very first time we screened the trailer of this film, a community elder stood up. And he said, listen, if you manage to get support, I'm going to donate land where this dam can be built. And with that, just that very early promise, it made our ask very concrete. So we knew we had to find help and support to make this dam happen because the land was already available. And that's such an important contribution. And I always say, it's not just about the money. It's this networks. It's this introductions to each other. In terms of advocacy, this is how Climate Story Lab, the East Africa edition came about. From this work, we ended up meeting all these organizers and stakeholders who are working in advocacy. And we said, this is how we learned about Climate Story Labs. We said, okay, this is a great platform. It brings all these people together. Maybe that's what we need. And so we were able to take our work from the community level engagement to the national level and all these other screenings globally. I always share this right there because it's a work of me. and is a testament to just how magical collaborations can be. And each one of them has come at a different time. Some came at the beginning, some came towards the middle, others came towards the end to help us finish the project. So if I was to summarize what we were able to do with this film, I would say we were able to run a campaign that had local level engagement advocacy component. It had a national component, had a global component. And hopefully we were able to wrap up as best as we could. So this is not unique to us. This is something we can all do. Whether it's through your poetry, whether it's through a podcast, and we're constantly sharing information on how to run your campaign. I would just like to inspire us and say, please know that you never need to reinvent the wheel. There are people who have been doing this work longer than us, people like Nemo right here. Reach out to them. And there are good people in this world. There are people who are willing to help. And there are people who are committed and looking for you. And I have seen that in the work and the power of storytelling. So thank you so much. And I look forward to hanging out later.
How do we accelerate all these indigenous stories? So there are a lot of stories out there in terms of community, in terms of how a lot of people are trying to fight with climate change in the local communities. How do you think that we can accelerate collaboration to foster this story and at the end be able to help this community, that are facing this climate change crisis? I mean, from agriculture to flooding, waste management, amongst other things. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. And I'm going to answer it in two parts. One, I will say that I'll start with my personal belief, which is I always believe in starting where you are. How do we start where we are with what we have? And I like to say that we have smartphones these days, so there's no excuse of not telling a story or not, figuring out, recording yourself and releasing it. When I think, and I know it's pretty much the same in most countries in Africa, back home, my grandmother, they're very organized. They have groups, right? They have meetings that they have, for instance. They have WhatsApp groups. They have their groups on Facebook. I like to say that all those are platforms. It's how we organize as a people. We meet at social halls. We meet after church. We meet for, fellowships and stuff like that. And I usually say for students, for example, when you start creating your work, start using those platforms that exist. Because people are communing there, people are meeting there. Start releasing your stuff there. Start taking photos and posting them on IG, for example, and saying that this is where your film is screening. Start reaching out to some of the people you meet here and say, where are you from? You're from this place in Nigeria. Would you like to screen my film in your community, for example? And it's okay if it's a TV monitor like this one or a projector. And for those of us who have been doing this work for some time, who do you work with? Do you mentor people, for example? When you go to film in the village or communities, for example, or somewhere where you're not from, do you collaborate with the community members there? And I don't mean where they come and carry your tripod and stuff like that, like truly meaningful collaboration. Because when community elders, for example, share with you their indigenous knowledge, they're co-authoring that piece of work with you. How are you crediting them? And really involving them meaningfully in this process. And I think it's really just debunking what we have been taught as the very conventional formula and process of storytelling to one that works for us. So that's what I always say. And then from there, we must uplift each other. If you know of platforms that exist for a filmmaker who doesn't have the same access as you do, we must share them, right? Because access is a big problem for us in our communities, and especially in the arts, you know it. You hear people applying somewhere, they're getting certain funding, and you're like, how do you know about these things? And so we must be willing to share because we need an army of us. We need so many of us telling these stories, telling them in different formats, telling them from everywhere. We need a critical mass because it's how then you drive narrative shift and narrative change. So that's what I would say. And so there's an entry point for each one of us.
So I'm a 15-year-old kind of activist, but I'm currently working on a documentary, and it's almost overwhelming trying to tell a story. I'm not really understanding if you're answering all the questions and what is going to happen after. That sustainability is a very so like what do you do after? What do you do after your work? So can you give some advice on how you developed, I don't know, this like was it a process or did you figure it out as you went on about you created like what did you plan on building the dam while you were creating the documentary, and how do you like any advice for the younger generation of film creators?
Did you hear the question? Okay. I will not pretend to have all the answers. There's a lot of things that you will figure out as you go. It's just the truth. Yeah. It's great to have these beautiful write-ups and presentations on paper. They always look good, and it's good to start with a plan, but always make room for the fact that once you hit the ground, a lot of things might change because there might be new information that will come to light. Maybe the course of your life experiences or the people or protagonists that you meet, their life experiences might change, and you want to follow that and accommodate that. And the second thing is just really tell the story that you want to tell that resonates with you. You don't have to be like anybody. You don't have to see another documentary somewhere and say, this is the kind of documentary I want to make. Just make what you feel is true to you. Yes, have other documentaries you want to watch to inspire you. Study their work, their structure, their story arc, how it flows. But come back to the story that feels true and authentic to you. Then reach out to the people you know. Start even at home. Start in this room. Start in your school. Start with all those people. Call them for a screening and everything else like I shared. And then as you do that, they will introduce you to these people and journalists and Nemo vaccines and everybody else who's in this room. So just step by step. You don't have to figure it all out as you start.
Access to the story is one thing, and then access to funding is another thing. So you can have like a very brilliant story you want to tell, but then you might not have access to the people that you need to interview or the community that you need to immerse yourself in to be able to tell a story so authentic. And I think in a way it's also a reality here for Nigerians because there's a lot of hurdles to cross to be able to get access to people and to places. There's the hurdle of, are you an indigenous of the place? What rights do you have to that story? Even though it's a story that affects you and you feel passionate about it, then you have to prove that you have the right to tell the story. And it is very interesting, and I'd like to know what your take is on it.
There's a big conversation that's been happening on extractive storytelling, which is where filmmakers parachute into a place. They go and they take, videos and footage of all this community and these people, then they go. And the community has no idea what really happened. Was a film made? Was it released? Did it do really well? How was it received by other people? And the community members or the protagonists are relegated to just a role of show up, do this, and off you go. In fact, it goes a step further, where they're not necessarily credited for their contribution. And if they are, they're given very, minimal kind of credit that doesn't signify their contribution. It goes also further, where as storytellers, we feel that we are working, so we need to get paid. But the protagonist who spend time or a whole day with us and we are following them, we feel that we don't need to pay them. But that day they did not go to work because they were with us. And so these are questions that we must really face honestly, right? How are we compensating them? How are we involving them meaningfully? What does true collaboration look like? Because it has to be like on an equal level where I appreciate and recognize whatever contribution you bring.
much as I have a certain skill and I bring in the cameras and everything. But then how do you gain trust? Right? I know different filmmakers have different methods. But one of the main ways I know is sometimes you're just gonna need to show up even without a camera. And you're just gonna hang out. Just hang out with your protagonist for some time. Hang out in the community. Let them understand what you want to do. Tell them what you know and what you don't know. And just be honest, if it's a journey, it's going to be a journey of discovery with them. In fact, show them some of the rushes. The same way as a director, you want to go and review your rushes afterwards. Share with them. Hear what they have to say. Tell them the process, and I promise you, it's not too complicated for them to understand. We often think that our protagonists or our contributors, because they're not from the industry, they're not, they will not understand the process. They will. And that way, in my opinion, it becomes a very authentic partnership and collaboration, and they understand your process. And hopefully, once you have earned that trust, you will know. And then you have access to their life. Because that's the authenticity, hopefully, that you're looking for. So I would say that's a starting point. But I also respect that different filmmakers, have different methods. But I know this is one of the ones that works.